Hey, welcome back everybody and happy holiday season. You're watching Real Reactions and I'm Dave. On this channel, we go over some of the most mind-bending, jaw-dropping, and just plain crazy reels that are available on the internet today. Let's get started.
Plant false memories in the brain.
What?
Seeing that person commit the crime, even though that person's utterly innocent, that it becomes a planted memory.
Did we just figure out who's behind the Mandela effect? I found this really strange article, and it's pretty old. They say it's pretty easy to distort memories through programming, but they can actually implant memories. They did a study where 70% of the subjects had thought they actually committed a crime when they didn't. It also says this study is 100 years old. Check this out. There was a case of a woman found unalived in Chicago, and this farmer's son was questioned by the police in such a way that it made him believe he committed the crime even though he had a perfect alibi. Although everyone knew of the alibi, he continuously confessed to it, and, well, a week later, read the bottom. Are you kidding me? So is the Mandela effect the testing of...
We can plant false memories in the brain.
And if they can do that, what else could they possibly do?
And in a different context, one of the emerging areas that's really interesting in law neuroscience is pain detection. And once we understand the circuitries that cause pain, I guess the question is, could we then instill pain and use that in many coercive measures in the legal system as well?
Oh, and when it comes to this Mandela effect, the cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo, I specifically remember my mother telling me what a cornucopia was. Put in the comments if you have the same memory. Could the Mandela effect be a worldwide testing of this false memory implanting? This video is for entertainment purposes only. And in fact, I'm just making stuff up. This is all lies. The World Economic Forum never said any of that.
That's pretty crazy. I will say, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're being questioned by a police officer or a detective, always get an attorney every time, because that's pretty crazy. That study was 100 years old where they were able to coerce people into believing that they committed a crime they did not commit.
The eyes are useless when the mind is blind. We have been blinded by our government-funded education centers to accept only the mainstream narrative, ignoring all the evidence that the eyes see. That is the conclusion I've drawn with a lot of the haters of this mud flood theory. Some are not ready to be broken free of that programming, and some outright refuse. The mud flood is one of the easiest theories to prove. I have shown thousands of photos over the years of doing this, from the railroad tracks not being laid but being unburied, as can even be seen here in recent times, to the massive brick archways buried under meters of soil. Yet some want to laugh and still just think these are basement windows. But that's okay. I don't make these videos for those people. I make them for the awakened few, with open eyes that can see past the lies. We can see our buried history, hidden in plain sight. We can see the beauty of what this realm was and what it can be. And we don't pretend to have all the answers. But that won't stop us from questioning everything and helping others do the same. You guys are the true voice of this movement. I just help put it into words.
That's pretty interesting. I don't find it to be too crazy that there could have been massive landslides, especially considering all the major religions believe in a worldwide flood. So I would definitely need more evidence, but I'm not closed off to this idea.
There was a time where obviously God stored up water above the firmament to flood the earth, but this time it's fire. And yeah, there's many examples of this. And yeah, that kind of weird stuff in Cappadocia. Pretty wild. Obviously, look at that big thing at the top of that mountain.
Looks like it could have been a castle or something.
Yeah, it must have been a really big structure. See Cappadocia, Turkey. And we've talked about Cappadocia, Turkey a lot. We talked about it in the very first short season podcast with Alpha Talks. Obviously, that's one of the best examples. And what I didn't realize until today, literally today, I read this. 1 Peter 1. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to those who are the elect exiles of the dispersion in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. But obviously, he mentions specifically Cappadocia, Turkey. How about that? And then so obviously then you see clearly in that place. Like I said, that's probably the best example where you can see, obviously, there were once buildings. They were not just mountains. They didn't just carve into those mountains.
They look like melted, for sure, stones that were like solid stones that have been melted into these structures with like warped doorways and warped kind of wavy architecture. And it's kind of like, did they build that like that? Did they build it wavy like that? Or once buildings at one point that melted down to that extent?
Yeah, I think to me, it's so clear that those things were once structures. Now they're just melted and deformed. So obviously we talk about the day of the Lord. There's fervent heat. Peter obviously later describes in 2 Peter that there was a time where obviously God stored up water above the firmament to flood the earth, but this time it's fire. And yeah, there's many examples of this. And yeah, that kind of weird stuff in Cappadocia. Pretty wild. Obviously look at that big thing at the top of that mountain.
Looks like it could have been a castle or something.
Yeah, it must have been a really big structure at the top. And how about the fact that the Bible actually mentions this place?
Yeah.
And now look at it.
You know, I don't really agree with their theory here. There are massive underground cities in Turkey. You can look it up if you want. Just look up massive underground city in Turkey found. You do that and you're going to find a couple of them. And they're large. I think they're large enough to support up to 50,000 people. And 2 of them are connected. So my guess would be that if they were building out underground cities, they certainly could dig into cliff faces. I'll tell you what, I'll try to find some reels on that because that is absolutely fascinating. Those underground cities still blow my mind.
The image you're about to see is not a photograph. This is one of the most detailed pencil drawings that I've ever done. I loved working on it more than I can even tell you. So I really hope that you like it as much as I liked making it.
Wow.
The image you're about to see.
That is absolutely amazing. If that was really hand drawn with a pencil, wow. There are some people with some very special talents. That's amazing. I'd like to see more.
Drop it!
That is kind of scary, but also awesome. I mean, what can I say? Some people are just built different.
Why is it that people are successful? It's simply this. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Why? It's because the rich think about wealth and affluence all the time. And what do the poor think about? The poor think about lack, loss, and limitation, risk, danger, fear, failure all the time. So if you want to unlock your potential, if you want to go straight to the stars, you have to use the law of substitution to keep your mind on what you want. Use the law of concentration to dwell continually on the results you desire. Be solution-centered rather than problem-centered. Be goal-centered rather than loss-centered. And the law of subconscious activity will begin to adjust your words, your actions, your feelings, your emotions, and everything to the point where you will draw into your life the people and circumstances that will harmonize with it. The key to your success in life is to use the power of your subconscious mind to program it. The only thing in the world you can control is your thinking.
This is a lot like Manifestation or the movie The Secret. If you haven't seen The Secret, I would recommend watching The Secret and actually following through with what you learn from it. Because that's essentially what he's talking about here. And I believe this to be true. Especially, we have the double slit experiment that shows that us as conscious beings make a difference to the universe around us. Consciousness is powerful.
People are losing their minds trying to figure out what this thing is. The ancient Egyptian sabu, or schist disc, is a meticulously designed 5,000-year-old artifact that's just impractical for just about every explanation they've tried to force on it. And a tour guide at the Cairo Museum claims it's part of a lost technology that he saw with his own eyes. Carved from a single piece of rock, this disc was found in the First Dynasty tomb of Prince Sabu, dating it way back to the Old Kingdom around 3000 BC. That's 5,000 years old. One of the oldest Egyptian artifacts ever found, but many claim it's even older than that, inherited by the First Dynasty from much longer ago, because it doesn't quite match anything else found from that same period. Measuring about 2 feet in diameter, it's made from a fairly brittle stone called schist, and no one can rightfully explain why it's shaped the way it is. Never mind it being carved from a single piece of stone, allegedly using the most primitive tools imaginable from the earliest days of Egypt. We also have no idea how they even made this thing in the first place. A circle with 3 fins curving inward that get as thin as 1/5 of an inch, that's half a centimeter thick at the tips, surrounded by 3 equal gaps and a center hole, which clearly looks like it was intended to be mounted onto something to spin, possibly part of a larger mechanism. It was found completely broken apart, so what we're seeing here is the reassembled artifact stored at the Cairo Museum. They've tried explaining it with everything in the book, calling it a flower vase, a candle holder, or even an ornamental bowl. Yeah, can't wait to eat my cereal out of that thing. None of these descriptions quite make any sense. Like, why on earth would anyone go to the incredible length of designing such a difficult object, mind you using their most primitive tools as this was from the First Dynasty, possibly earlier, into a complex shape that just isn't practical for any of these proposed purposes? The debunkers will tell you, oh, they were just incredible craftsmen and they carved this design because they just felt like it, and if you question it, you're disrespecting history. Look, this is a vase from around the same era, and although it's equally impressive to carve something like this out of granite, which I actually made another video on it, you can see it looks like a vase. Here's a bowl, which also looks like what we expect it to, practical for its intended purpose. Not to mention, Egyptian artifacts from later eras became considerably less sophisticated as time went on, so did they just forget how to carve intricate designs like this? Or did the First Dynasty Egyptians find this disc from people that existed before them? The real ancient vases, bowls, and urns were all built with clear practical uses in mind, whereas the schist disc almost looks like it was part of something else. Perhaps a mechanical gear of sorts, a piece of ancient technology lost to time, as there are other Egyptian artifacts that look almost exactly like gears. Maybe something like these were used in combination with the schist disc. Others have even gone to the length of recreating exact replicas of the disc themselves to experiment on, and found out that when a bit of air pressure is applied, it actually surprisingly spins pretty effectively. Maybe it was part of a forgotten timekeeping or star tracking device similar to the Antikythera mechanism of the Greeks. But still, there are others who claim there is a far, far more advanced purpose for this disc. Funny old world host Johanna James tells a story a tour guide told her while taking her through the Cairo Museum, who says his father, Abdel Hakim Youssef, was allegedly part of a team experimenting on this very disc back in the 80s. They made a 1-to-1 replica of it, stuck it on a rotating spindle, and spun it around real fast while blasting it with specific sound frequencies. All of this the tour guide claims to have seen with his own eyes. After a while of fine-tuning the frequencies projected onto the disc, what appeared to be an infinity symbol of pure energy formed around it. When they threw water and other small stones at it, they would be caught in an anti-gravitational force field that defied physics. The stones and even the water droplets they threw into this force field would be briefly suspended in mid-air around this energy field before falling to the ground. And they repeated this many times with different objects and elements, each of them briefly hovering around the disc with no known explanation. Yes, you heard it here, so it must be true. An ancient anti-gravity device. Can't wait for the debunkers to clip that soundbite. Nah, if this actually happened, it would be all over the news. Everyone in the scientific community would obviously be talking about it. Oh, that's adorable. History has a long pattern of silencing those who propose clean and easily accessible forms of energy that don't support the oil and gas industrial complex, like zero-point energy. But don't worry, that's all totally fake and for entertainment purposes only. At the end of the day, even if it wasn't made for anti-gravity levitation, but something more innocent, like, I don't know, a mechanical water irrigation system. Still, how in the world did they make this? People are losing their...
It's hard to say what that thing could be. I mean, based on what he was saying, it sounds like maybe it's some sort of frequency reflector of some sort, perhaps. But the first thing I thought when I saw it was definitely it being filled with water. I wonder if it was some sort of water wheel. Because the fact that it has the opening in the middle for a mounting and that it spun so easily when air was blown onto it, maybe it was some sort of water wheel. I really don't know.
There's a real chance that this man right here may have just saved your life. If you don't live in the United States, you've probably never heard of him, but your grandkids are going to read about him in school. With a single tweet, he shook the whole world. One of the reasons why is because he used a word. The word is called a nutraceutical. Do you know what a nutraceutical is? Most adults in America have never heard of a nutraceutical. Most adults in America are taking something called a pharmaceutical. They're taking a pill for their blood pressure or their cholesterol or their diabetes or their weight control or appetite or their mental health or something else. The drug companies have invested billions of dollars in drugs that go in the physician's desk reference. And every day around lunchtime, these drug companies bring your doctor and his staff lunch. The reason why is they want your doctor to know about their drugs that are in the physician's desk reference, their pharmaceutical drugs, to sell you more medication. But here's the thing. A nutraceutical is something that has the same effect as the pharmaceutical, only it's natural and there are no side effects. Ever since this tweet got published, the pharmaceutical stock's been crashing. Did you know that buried in hundreds of pages in the physician's desk reference, there are nutraceuticals that do the same thing as your pharmaceuticals, but with no side effects? This would mean people are getting off of drugs, they're saving money, and they're getting healthier. This will save lives all over the world, and it could also make the pharmaceutical companies very, very unhappy. I'm grateful for brave people that stand up and speak truth, even if it's not popular.
I seriously doubt that a nutraceutical could replace completely pharmaceutical medication. I'm sure both have their place. You know what I mean? But nutraceutical, I think, is probably worth a Google.
This is one of the saddest clips I've ever seen, and I hate to show it to you, but the world needs to know what's happening in Antarctica. The ice is melting at the fastest clip it's ever melted in the history of the World Wide Web and the entire world. And so these penguins that live in Antarctica that are native to Antarctica don't know what to do. They're depressed. They're at the end of their wits. They need ice to survive. And so some Nat Geo videographers caught them jumping off cliffs. They're at their last leg, you could say, or their last flipper, honestly, and they don't know what to do, and so some of them are just giving up. And here you can see they're rushing to the edge fast enough because they're so miserable. It's just too hard to watch. It's insanely hard for me to watch. And again, I apologize that I have to show this to you, but the world needs to know. We need to do something about it. We need to get some freezers down there or get something to help make more ice in Antarctica.
That's a pretty funny video.
Let's quickly, though, talk about the area of the Pentagon that was hit and what was important about that.
You know what's crazy is they actually reinforced the section that got hit. Did you ever see that?
So hold on. So there was construction done at the area?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow. I wonder what could have been going on during that.
No.
So why am I here? I don't know. I just don't know.
He's here, in part, because his floor was reinforced and held up for half an hour. In an astonishing stroke of luck, the terrorists had hit the only section of the Pentagon, the only section designed to resist a terrorist attack.
We had made several modifications to the building as part of that renovation that we think helped save people's lives.
Lee Evey runs a billion-dollar project to renovate the Pentagon. They've been working on it since 1993. The first section was 5 days away from being finished when the terrorists hit it with the 757.
Let's quickly...
That's a little too coincidental. You know, there's a lot of weird things going on with that. So let me just name off a few real quick. So the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld, the defense secretary at the time, said that they could not account for $2.4 trillion being spent in the defense budget. Then, the next day, that same area of the Pentagon that holds the accounting records was crashed into by the terrorists. So now there's no record of anything. And the guy who owned the Twin Towers and always ate breakfast at the top of the Twin Towers every day wasn't there that day. And just months before, he took out a terrorist insurance policy and ended up walking away with multiple billions of dollars after that attack. There's a lot of things to question about 9/11. If you haven't done it, I would start to look into it, because we all know our government seems to be one of the most dishonest things about our country. All right, that's it for today's video. If you guys like this kind of content, do me a big favor and just hit that like button below so that we can grow the channel. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see the next one, and I'll catch you later.